Part 1. The exhibition Captain Marcus Chen walked through the busy streets of Zephyria Prime, his boots clicking on the smooth metal pathways. The alien city stretched high into the purple sky, with buildings that twisted like DNA spirals and floating platforms carrying strange creatures he had never seen before. This was his first time on a Vorthok world. Everything felt wrong. The smell hit him first, something like burnt sugar mixed with wet metal. Then came the sounds, clicking, buzzing, and what might have been singing if it came from human throats. But Marcus was not here for sightseeing. He had a job to do. Captain Chen to base. He spoke into his cum device. "I'm entering the trade district now. Should reach the negotiation point in 20 minutes. "Copy that, Captain," came the reply from his ship. "Remember, we need those mining rights. Earth needs the crystals." Marcus nodded to himself. The Human Federation was growing fast, but they needed resources. The Vorthok had plenty of what humans needed, and humans had technology the Vorthok wanted. It should be a simple trade deal. He turned a corner and stopped. In front of him was the largest marketplace he had ever seen. Hundreds of alien species moved between stalls, buying and selling things that made no sense to human eyes. There were floating orbs that sang, plants that walked on tiny legs, and machines that seemed to think for themselves. Marcus checked his watch. He had time before the meeting. Maybe he could look around, get a better understanding of Vorthok culture. His training officer always said that knowing your trade partner was the key to good deals. He walked deeper into the market. Most of the aliens ignored him, though a few stared at his human features with curiosity. The Vorthok looked like giant blue crabs that walked upright, with 4 arms and eyes on stalks. They moved with purpose, their shell-like skin making soft scraping sounds as they walked. "Fresh Krelin meat." "Still moving," called one seller. "Memory." "Crystals from the Void Wars? See the battles yourself," shouted another. Marcus moved past them, fascinated despite himself. Then he heard something that made his blood run cold. "Come see the exotic pets, rare species from across the galaxy. Watch them perform." The word pets, in the context of a marketplace selling living beings, made Marcus's stomach turn. But he was a diplomat. Maybe this was normal for alien cultures. Maybe he was being too human in his thinking. Still, he found himself walking toward the voice. The exotic pet exhibition was set up in a large circle, the cages arranged around a central performance area. Each cage held a different creature. Marcus saw things with too many legs, things with no legs at all, and things that might have been plants or animals or something in between. A large Vorthok with golden markings on his shell stood in the center, speaking to a crowd of interested buyers. "Welcome, welcome," the Vorthok called out. "I am Dealer Vexhai, and I have the finest collection of rare pets in this sector, each one trained to entertain and obey." Marcus joined the crowd, trying to look like just another curious visitor. The first few cages held creatures he didn't recognize. The crowd seemed impressed as Vexhai made them jump through hoops and perform tricks. "Now," Vexhai announced, "for my most prized possession." He moved to a cage at the far end. It was larger than the others, decorated with gold bars and soft cushions. What was inside made Marcus forget how to breathe. A human woman sat in the cage. She looked young, maybe 25 years old. Her dark skin was clean but marked with old scars. Her hair was long and tangled, tied back with what looked like alien rope. She wore a simple gray dress that was torn in several places. Around her neck, wrists, and ankles were metal chains that glowed with a soft blue light. But it was her eyes that hit Marcus the hardest. They were intelligent, alert, and full of a pain that went deeper than any physical wound. "Behold," Vexhai declared, a genuine Terran, from the species that calls itself human. "Watch as she demonstrates her remarkable abilities." The crowd pressed closer. Marcus felt sick, but forced himself to stay calm. He had to understand what was happening. Terrans, Vexhai continued, are fascinating creatures. They have basic tool use, complex social behaviors, and can even learn simple commands in our language. Observe. He made a clicking sound, and the woman's whole body tensed. She looked at Vexhai with what Marcus recognized as barely controlled hatred. Stand, Vexai commanded in his clicking language. The woman stood slowly. The chains around her limbs glowed brighter. Dance for the nice people, Vexai ordered. Marcus watched in horror as the woman began to move. It wasn't really dancing, more like the movements of someone who had learned that resistance brought pain. She moved her arms and swayed her body while her eyes stared at the ground. The crowd made appreciative noises. Some took pictures. Amazing, said one Vorthok. She moves almost like she understands music. The facial expressions are so lifelike, said another. She almost looks sad. Marcus felt his hands clench into fists. He forced them to relax. Getting angry would not help the woman in the cage. Now watch this, Vexai said. He threw a small ball into the cage. Fetch, pet. The woman looked at the ball, then at Vexai. For a moment, Marcus thought she would refuse. Then her chains pulsed with that blue light, and she gasped in pain. She crawled to the ball and picked it up, bringing it back to Vexa. Good pet. Vexa praised her like she was a dog. Such intelligence, such obedience. He reached into the cage and patted her head. The woman closed her eyes and endured it. Where did you find such a specimen? Asked someone in the crowd. Ah, a wonderful story, Vexai replied. 3 cycles ago, we discovered a whole ship of these creatures drifting in space. Their primitive vessel had suffered some kind of malfunction. We rescued them, of course. Marcus felt his heart stop. A ship of humans? 3 years ago? Most of them were already broken by their ordeal, Vexai continued. But a few like this one had enough spirit left to make good pets. I've spent much time training her. She can follow over 50 commands now. Remarkable, said a buyer. Are there others available? Of course. I have contacts throughout the consortium. Terrans make excellent companions, loyal, trainable, and surprisingly emotional. They form strong bonds with their owners. Marcus felt like he was going to be sick, but he forced himself to keep listening. This particular specimen is special. Vexai went on. She was some kind of leader among her pack. It's very intelligent, even for a Terran. Watch this. She can even mimic our speech. He clicked at the woman again. Speak, pet. Tell the nice people your name. The woman looked up for the first time since Marcus had been watching. Her eyes swept across the crowd, and for just a moment, they met his. In that instant, Marcus saw something that shook him to his core. This was not a broken creature. Behind the pain and the forced obedience, her eyes burned with intelligence, anger, and desperate hope. Her lips moved, and she spoke in perfectly clear English. Please, take me home. The crowd laughed and clapped, thinking it was just animal sounds. But Marcus understood every word. Fascinating, said one buyer. Such complex vocalizations. She does that sometimes, Vexai said proudly. Terrans make many interesting noises. Some people think they're trying to communicate, but of course that's impossible. They're far too primitive for real language. The woman's eyes found Marcus again. This time she mouthed a single word, silent but clear. Help. Marcus turned and walked away before anyone could see the expression on his face. His hands were shaking as he pulled out his cum device. Chen de base, he said, his voice carefully. Controlled. Go ahead, Captain. Cancel the trade meeting. We have a bigger problem, sir. Marcus looked back at the exhibition, where the woman sat in her golden cage, surrounded by aliens who thought she was an animal. We just found our people. Part 2. The impossible truth. Marcus sat in his small quarters on the ship, staring at his computer screen. The words glowed back at him. Colony ship New Horizons status, missing last contact, 3 years, 2 months ago. Read the report. 2,000 colonists, families, children, scientists, and farmers and teachers. All heading to start a new life on Kepler 4 for 2B. The ship had vanished without a trace somewhere in the outer systems. Now he knew where they had gone. Captain, his communications officer's voice came through the door. Sir, you missed the trade meeting. The Vorthok are asking questions. Tell them I got sick, Marcus called back. Some kind of human virus. Tell them I need a day to recover. Heard footsteps walking away. Marcus turned back to his screen and started planning. 3 hours later, he walked back into the marketplace. This time he wore civilian clothes and carried a bag of Vorthok currency. He had practiced his story. He was a rich human collector. Interested in buying exotic pets for his private collection, the exhibition was still busy. Vexai was showing off a creature that looked like a walking crystal to a group of young Vorthok. Marcus waited his turn, watching the human woman in her cage. She sat quietly, her eyes focused on nothing. Marcus noticed small things the aliens missed. Her fingers moved in patterns against her leg. Her eyes tracked every guard, every exit, every weapon. She was not the broken pet the Vorthok thought she was. Ah, the sick human. Vexai noticed Marcus approaching. Feeling better, I see. That brings you back to my humble exhibition. Marcus forced a smile. I was very impressed yesterday. I'm thinking about starting my own collection. Vexai's eyes lit up, Mark says. Could almost see the currency symbols reflecting. In them, excellent. What kind of companion are you looking for? I have creatures from 17 different worlds. Actually, Marcus said, looking at the human woman, I'm interested in the Terran. Very unusual specimen. Ah, you have excellent taste. Vexai moved toward the cage. She is indeed special. It's very intelligent, very responsive. She learns new tricks quickly and rarely gets sick. The woman looked up as they approached. Her eyes met Marcus's for just a moment, and he saw recognition there. She knew he was human, but she showed no emotion, no hope. Just careful, patient watching. May I examine her more closely? Marcus asked. I want to make sure she's healthy before I make an offer. Of course, but please don't get too close to the bars. Terrans can be unpredictable when they smell their own kind. Marcus stepped closer to the cage. The woman watched him carefully. Does she'll understand our language? Marcus asked. Oh, no. Vexai laughed. Terrans are far too primitive for real language. They can learn to respond to simple commands like any good pet, but actual understanding? Impossible. Marcus nodded, then looked directly at the woman. Speaking in Vorthaki, he said, if you can understand me, blink twice. The woman stared at him for a long moment. Then she blinked. Once. Twice. Marcus felt his heart racing but kept his expression neutral. Vexai was busy looking at other customers and hadn't noticed. What's her name? Marcus asked casually. Her designation is Pet 47. Vexai replied, though she makes certain sounds repeatedly, we think it might be some kind of comfort noise. Sarah, or something like that? Sarah. Marcus looked at the woman again. In Berthaki, he said, is your name Sarah? 2 blinks. Are there others? Humans. 2 blinks. Then she held up both hands. 10 fingers. Then again, 20. She did this several more times. Marcus understood. Many others. She seems very responsive, he said to Vexai.
What can you tell me about her background?
Well, Vexai moved closer, speaking in a normal voice. The aliens always talked freely in front of their pets. She was on a large ship. We found drifting, big vessel. Probably carried 2,000 of them. Most were already dead or dying when we found them. We saved about half. Sarah's eyes flashed with anger, but she kept still. What happened to the others? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Oh, sold throughout the consortium. Terrans are very popular pets. They're emotional, which makes them entertaining. They bond strongly with their owners. And they live for a long time, sometimes 50 or 60 cycles. Marcus did the math. Vorthok cycles, that was about 80 human years. They were talking about lifespans, like livestock. This one was special, though, Vexai continued. She was in some kind of leadership position on the ship. The other Terrans looked to her for guidance. Very interesting pack behavior. Sarah was still listening, her face calm, but Marcus could see her hands clenched into fists. She had some kind of training, too, Vexai went on. Technical knowledge. When we first captured her, she kept trying. To fix things. Touching our machines. Studying our equipment. Quite amusing, really. Like watching an animal try to use tools. Marcus felt sick. Sarah had been trying to understand their technology, probably looking for weaknesses or escape routes. The Vorthok had found it entertaining. Where are the others now? Marcus asked. The ones from her ship? All scattered across the consortium. There's quite a market for Terrans. Some go to families as companions, others to entertainment centers. A few of the stronger ones went to work colonies. Vexy paused. Though I hear the work colony ones don't last as long. Terrans are surprisingly fragile for such an emotional species. Marcus looked at Sarah again. In Vorthiki, he asked, "Do you know where the others are?" She stared at him for a long moment. Then, very carefully, she nodded. "I'm very interested in purchasing her," Marcus said to Vexi. "What's your price?" "Ah, well, she's quite valuable. I've had her for 3 cycles, fully trained and obedient. I couldn't let her go for less than 50,000 credits. It was a fortune. More than Marcus had with him, but he had to try." "That's quite high," he said. "What makes her worth so much?" "Her intelligence level is remarkable," Vexi explained. "Watch this." He turned to Sarah and spoke in Vorthaki. "Pet, show the nice buyer your tricks." Sarah looked at Vexi, then at Marcus. Slowly, she stood up and began to perform. She counted to 10 in Vorthaki. She drew simple pictures in the sand on her cage floor. She even sang a Vorthok children's song. But Marcus noticed something else. While she performed, her eyes never stopped moving. She was watching the guards, studying the lock on her cage, counting the number of aliens in the crowd. She was planning. "Impressive," Marcus said. "But I need time to consider such a large purchase." "Of course. But I must warn you, I have other interested buyers. Family on Kurthex wants her as a companion for their children. And there's a private collector on the rim who pays premium prices." Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. If Sarah was sold to someone in the outer rim, he might never find her again. "When do you need an answer?" he asked. "The transport to Kurthex leaves tomorrow morning," Vexi said. "If you want her, you'll need to decide by tonight." Marcus nodded and walked away, his mind racing. He had less than 24 hours to figure out how to save Sarah, and if she really knew where the other humans were being kept. This was about much more than saving one person. As he left the marketplace, he heard Vexi speaking to another customer. "Yes, Terrans are wonderful. Pets. So loyal, so trainable, and the best part, they never try to escape. After a few months of proper training, they accept their place completely." Marcus looked back one last time. Sarah was sitting in her cage, looking calm and defeated. But as their eyes met across the crowd, she mouthed one word: "Tonight." Marcus nodded slightly and walked away. Sarah was right. Tonight, everything would change. Part 3. The escape Marcus waited in the shadows outside the exhibition hall. It was 3 in the morning, Zephyria, prime time. The marketplace was closed, with only a few security guards walking their rounds. He had been watching for 2 hours, learning their patterns. His ship's engineer had given him a small device that could overload the station's power grid for exactly 12 minutes. After that, the backup systems would kick in. 12 minutes to get Sarah and get out. He pressed the button. The lights went out across 3 city blocks. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in red shadows. In the distance, alarms began to wail. Marcus ran toward the exhibition hall. The main doors were locked, but he had expected that. He pulled out a plasma cutter and made quick work of the side entrance. The metal door fell inward with a crash. Inside, the hall was dark, except for the red emergency lights. The cages were arranged in their circle, but most of the creatures inside were making frightened noises in the darkness. "Sarah," Marcus called out softly. Here came a voice from the far end. Marcus ran toward the sound and found Sarah's cage. She was standing at the bars, her chains still glowing faintly in the darkness. "The lock is electronic," she said quickly, "but there's a manual override on the side panel." Marcus found the panel and ripped it open. Inside were several colored wires. "Which ones?" "Blue and yellow together, then green," Sarah said. "I've been watching them open it for 3 years." Marcus cut the wires as she instructed. The cage door swung open with a soft click. Sarah stepped out and immediately grabbed his arm. "We can't leave yet." "What?" "Sarah, we have maybe 10 minutes before the power comes back." There are others, she said urgently. 12 more humans. In the basement. They're kept down there when they're not performing. Marcus felt his stomach drop. 12 more? Sarah, I can't carry 12 people. You don't have to carry us, Sarah said. She was already moving toward a door marked with Vorthok symbols. You can walk, but I need you to help me free them. Followed her through the door and down a narrow staircase. The basement was even darker than the main hall. But as they reached the bottom, Marcus heard voices. Human voices. Sarah, Sarah, is that you? Called someone from the darkness. It's me, Tom, Sarah called back, and I brought help. Marcus's eyes adjusted to the darkness. Around the basement were 12 small cages, each holding a human. Men, women, and 3 children who couldn't be older than 10 years old. Oh my God, Marcus whispered. They're the ones Vex High keeps for private shows, Sarah explained as she moved to the first cage. Tom here used to be our ship's engineer. Lisa was a teacher. The children, ... her voice broke slightly. The children were born after we were captured. Marcus stared at the 3 small faces looking at him through the bars. Children who had never known freedom, who had been raised as pets. How long do we have? Asked Tom as Sarah worked on his cage lock. Maybe 8 minutes, Marcus replied, helping with another cage. That's not enough time to get everyone to your ship, said Lisa, a woman with graying hair. Then what do we do? Marcus asked. Sarah looked up from the lock she was working on. We steal a Vorthok transport. I know where they keep them. One by one, the cages opened. The humans stepped out, most of them weak from years of confinement. But Marcus could see the determination in their eyes. They had been waiting for this. Chance for 3 years. Listen carefully, Sarah said as the group gathered around her. Tom, you take the children and head for the loading dock. There's a small transport there with the registration VX7749. Can you fly it? If it's anything like our old shuttles, yes, Tom replied. Good, everyone else? We're going to split up. Marcus, you go with Lisa and get to your ship. Take off as soon as you can and wait for us at coordinates. ... She rattled off a series of numbers. Wait, Marcus interrupted. What about you? Sarah was already moving toward another staircase. I'm going to the security center. I need to delete all records of humans being kept here. If the Vorthok find out what happened, they'll know to look for more rescue attempts. Sarah, that's suicide. There will be guards. Not many. Most of the security staff went to deal with the power outage. Sarah paused at the bottom of the stairs. Marcus, this is bigger than just us. There are over 1,000 humans still trapped across Vorthok space. If I don't cover our tracks, no one else will ever get rescued. Marcus wanted to argue, but he could see in her eyes that she had already made up her mind. 2 minutes. Tom called out, who's already helping the children toward the exit. Go, Sarah said. All of you, go now. Marcus grabbed Lisa's hand and ran for the main exit. Behind him, he heard Sarah's footsteps heading up the other staircase. The marketplace was chaos. Vorthok security forces were running everywhere, trying to figure out what had caused the power failure. Marcus and Lisa moved through the shadows, avoiding the main streets. She's going to get herself killed, Lisa whispered as they ran. She knows what she's doing, Marcus replied, though he wasn't sure he believed it. They reached Marcus's ship just as the power came back on across the city. The lights blazed back to life, and Marcus could hear shouting in the distance. Chen. 2 engine room, he called as they boarded. Fire up the engines. We're leaving now. Captain, we don't have clearance for takeoff, his pilot replied. We're not asking for permission, Marcus said. Tom, are you and the children clear? Tom's voice came over the radio. We're airborne. Kids are scared but safe. Heading for the coordinates now. Marcus looked out the window toward the exhibition hall. No sign of Sarah yet. Captain, his pilot said urgently, Vorthok security ships are launching. If we don't leave now, we won't leave at all. Marcus closed his eyes. Every instinct told him to wait for Sarah, but if they were captured, no one would ever know what happened to the other humans. Take us up, he ordered. The ship lifted off. Just as the first Vorthok fighters reached them, Marcus watched the exhibition hall shrink below them, praying that Sarah had made it out. Then, as they cleared the atmosphere, a new voice came over the radio. Human ship. This is Transport VX7749. One additional passenger picked up. Ready to jump to hyperspace? Sarah, Marcus called. Came her voice. Tired but alive. Sorry I'm late. Had to make a few extra stops. Extra stops? The security center had files on every human held in this sector. Names, locations, buyers. I copied everything before I destroyed the originals. Marcus felt a smile spread across his face. How many in this sector alone? 347 humans across 12 worlds? My God, it gets better, Sarah continued. I also found their military communications logs. Marcus there. Planning something big. An attack on Federation space. And they think we're too primitive to stop them. As both ships jumped to hyperspace, Marcus realized that what had started as a simple rescue had become something much larger. Sarah hadn't just escaped from her cage. She had turned herself into a weapon. Sarah, he said over the radio, what's our next move? We go home, she replied. We tell the Federation what we've learned, and then we come back for the others. All of them? Every single one, Sarah said, her voice hard as steel. They kept us in cages and called us pets. It's time to show them what happens when you underestimate the human species. In the transport ship, Sarah looked at the three children who had never known freedom. They were sleeping now, finally safe. But she knew their nightmare was just beginning to end. She had spent 3 years pretending to be a broken pet. Now it was time to remind the galaxy why humans were the most dangerous species. In known space, the hunt was just beginning. Part 4. The network 3 weeks later. Sarah stood in the main briefing room of Federation Command on Earth. Around the table sat 12 admirals, 3 generals, and the Secretary of Defense. The room was silent as she finished explaining her plan. Let me understand this correctly, Admiral Rodriguez said slowly. You want us to coordinate simultaneous attacks on 17 Vorthok worlds based on intelligence gathered by humans who are still pretending to be pets. That's exactly right, Sarah replied calmly. It's insane, General Park muttered. Talking about military operations across 3 sectors of space, based on the word of slaves, added Admiral Chen. No offense intended, Dr. Okafor. But how can we be sure your ... sources are reliable? Sarah activated the holographic display in the center of the table. Because they've been sending me detailed reports for the past 3 weeks. The display showed a map of Vorthok space with blinking dots scattered across multiple worlds. Each represented a human held in captivity. How? Asked Secretary Williams. The same way I communicated with Captain Chen in the marketplace, Sarah explained. The Vorthok think we're animals. They don't pay attention to what we do. For 3 years, I've been teaching other humans a simple communication system using body language, facial expressions, and positioning. She pressed a button, and the display zoomed in on one world. HFY Prime, home to the Vorthok Naval Academy. They have 37 humans there, including Dr. James Wright, who used to head the Federation's Propulsion Research Division. Wright's alive? Admiral Rodriguez leaned forward. Alive and working as a maintenance pet in their engine testing facility, Sarah said. For 2 years, he's been watching their latest starship designs. He knows their engine capabilities, their weapon systems, and their defensive weaknesses. She pressed another button. The display shifted to show detailed technical diagrams. These are blueprints for the new Vorthok, Dreadnought class. Dr. Wright memorized every detail and transmitted it to us through hand signals during a routine pet show last week. The room erupted in whispers. The specifications on the screen were far advanced from anything in Federation files. How many assets do you have in place? Asked General Hayes. 347 confirmed contacts across 12 worlds, Sarah replied. Teachers working in Vorthok schools who know their education systems. Engineers who understand their technology. Even some humans working in government buildings as ornamental pets for high-ranking officials. Admiral Rodriguez studied the display. What kind of intelligence are they providing? Sarah smiled grimly. Everything. Fleet movements, supply routes, military communications, political discussions. The Vorthok discuss their most sensitive information freely in front of us because they think we can't understand. She activated another section of the display. For example, Admiral Vextel's pet human learned that the Vorthok plan to attack the Titan colonies in exactly 43 days. They think it will be a surprise assault. How do we know this is accurate? Secretary Williams asked. Because 3 different humans in 3 different locations confirmed the same information, Sarah replied. Maria Santos works as a companion, pet for Admiral Vextel's family. Dr. Chen Li is kept as an entertainment pet at the officers' club, where they plan strategy. And David Park is a maintenance pet who services the communication systems they use to send orders. All 3 heard the same plans? General Park asked. All 3, and they all passed the information through our network. Sarah's voice grew harder. The Vorthok are going to attack Titan with their entire 4th fleet. 80 ships. To catch our colonists completely defenseless, Admiral Rodriguez stood up and walked to the display. What do you need from us? Ship positions, Sarah said immediately. I need Federation fleets in place at exactly the right coordinates. My people will provide real-time intelligence on Vorthok movements, but you have to trust us completely. A big ask, General Hayes said. You're talking about risking entire fleets based on reports from, forgive me, but from pets. Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. Those pets include some of the best minds the Federation ever produced. Dr. Wright designed half our current Starship engines. Professor Martinez wrote our first contact protocols. Captain Torres commanded 3 ships before she was captured. She paused and looked around the room. These people have spent 3 years watching, learning, and waiting for a chance to fight back. They've memorized guard schedules, studied weapon systems, and mapped escape routes. They're not pets. They're the most motivated intelligence network. In galactic history, Secretary Williams leaned back in her chair. Let's say we believe you. How do we coordinate something this complex? Sarah pressed another button on the display. Simple. We don't change anything about how the Vorthok see us. My people continue to act like obedient pets. They gather intelligence and pass it through our network. When the time comes, they'll be in position to help from the inside. Help how? Admiral Chen asked. Sabotage, misdirection, critical system failures at exactly the right moments. Sarah's smile was cold. You'd be amazed how much damage a pet can do when everyone thinks they're too stupid to be dangerous. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Admiral Rodriguez spoke. What about the rescue operations? Can your people coordinate mass breakouts? Already planned, Sarah said. But it has to happen simultaneously with the military action. If even one world raises the alarm early, the Vorthok will realize what's happening. She changed the display. To show timelines and coordinate systems, the attack on Titan is our trigger point. When the Vorthok commit their 4th fleet to that assault, we hit their supply worlds and communication centers. My people will disable security systems, open doors, and guide rescue teams to the other humans. How many can we save? General. Hayes asked, if everything goes perfectly? All of them, Sarah replied. If it goes wrong? ... maybe none. That's not very reassuring, muttered Admiral Chen. Neither was spending 3 years in a cage, Sarah shot back. But my people are ready to take the risk. Secretary Williams stood up. I need to discuss this with the president. But Sarah ... Assuming we approve this operation, what do you need? From us right now? Communication equipment? Sarah said immediately. Something small that looks like a pet toy or decoration. My people need to be able to send real-time updates during the operation. Anything else? Trust, Sarah said simply. Trust that humans who have been treated as animals for 3 years haven't forgotten how to think like soldiers. Scientists and tacticians. Admiral Rodriguez nodded slowly. When would this operation begin? 36 days from now, Sarah? Replied 3 days before the Vorthok attacked Titan. We hit their supply lines first, then their communication networks. By the time they realize what's happening, their surprise attack will be walking into a trap, and if it fails, Sarah looked around the room at the skeptical faces of the Federation's military leadership. Then at least we'll go down fighting. Instead of sitting in cages, she said. But it won't fail. You're about to see what 3 years of careful planning can accomplish when it's done by people who have nothing left to lose. She paused and looked directly at Admiral Rodriguez. The Vorthok made one critical mistake. They thought breaking our bodies would break our minds. Instead, they gave us time to think, plan, and prepare. They turned some of the Federation's best people into the most motivated resistance network in history. And now, Secretary Williams asked. Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. Now we show them what happens when you underestimate the human species. They wanted pets. They're about to discover they've been keeping wolves. As the meeting ended, Sarah looked out the window at Earth's blue sky. In 36 days, either hundreds of humans would be free, or they would all be dead. But for the first time in 3 years, Sarah felt truly hopeful. The network was ready. The plans were in place. Soon, the galaxy would remember why humans were never meant to be kept in cages. Part 5. The Reckoning. Admiral Vex fell, stood on the bridge of his flagship. Watching the Titan system grow larger on the main screen, around him, 80 Vorthok ships moved in perfect formation. The humans would never see them coming. Sir, his communications officer reported, all ships are in position. The human colonies have no idea we're here. Excellent. Vextel clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. Today we show the galaxy that the Vorthok Consortium is the true power in this sector. What he didn't know was that in a cage in his personal quarters, Maria Santos was watching everything through the open door. She had been Admiral Vextel's pet for 2 years, and he had never bothered to close the door during important meetings. Maria pressed a small device hidden in her collar. It looked like a simple decoration, but it was actually Federation communication equipment. Her message was simple. Attack begins now. 80 ships confirmed. The message traveled instantly across space to every human in the network. On 12 different worlds, humans who had pretended to be pets for 3 years suddenly stopped pretending. Dr. James Wright was in the engine testing facility on Kethfer Prime when he received the signal. For 2 years, he had cleaned floors and carried tools while the Vorthok engineers worked on their latest ships. They thought he was too stupid to understand what they were doing. They were wrong. Wright moved to the main computer terminal. Guards weren't watching him closely after all. He was just a pet. His fingers flew over the controls, entering commands he had memorized months ago. Across the Vorthok fleet heading toward Titan, engine systems started failing. Not all at once, that would be too obvious. But one by one, ships began dropping out of formation with random malfunctions. Admiral Vextel frowned as his tactical officer reported the problems. Sir, we're getting failure reports from 12 ships. Engine problems, mostly. Mechanical failures happen, Vextel said. Continue the attack with the remaining ships? But more ships kept failing. By the time they reached Titan's orbit, only 47 ships were still operational, and that's when the trap was sprung. The Federation fleet was waiting. 200 human ships had been positioned perfectly around Titan using the intelligence provided by Sarah's network. As the Vorthok fleet emerged from hyperspace, they found themselves surrounded. Sir, Vextel's tactical officer clicked frantically. Human ships everywhere. How did they know? But Vextel never got to answer that question, because at that moment, Maria Santos stood up in his quarters and spoke for the first time in 2 years. Admiral, she said in perfect Vorthaki, I think your pet wants to tell you something. Vextel spun around, his eyes wide with shock. The human was standing upright, looking directly at him with intelligent, angry eyes. Possible, he whispered. You're just an animal, no? Maria replied calmly. I'm Dr. Maria Santos, former head of Federation intelligence. And you're about to lose this war. She pressed another button on her collar device. Her voice was broadcast across every Vorthok communication channel in the fleet. Attention, Vorthok forces. This is Dr. Maria Santos of the Human Federation. For 3 years you have kept my people in cages. You've called us pets. You thought we were too primitive to understand your language, your technology, or your plans? On the bridge, Vextel's crew stared in horror as the pet continued speaking. You were wrong. Every human you captured has been watching, learning, and planning. We know your ship designs, your military strategies, and your weaknesses. The attack you thought would be a surprise has become your trap. Across the fleet, other humans were taking action. On 17 different ships, pets who had been cleaning engine rooms for years were now sabotaging critical systems. Security doors opened mysteriously. Weapon systems failed at crucial moments. The space battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The Vorthok had superior technology, but the humans had something better: complete knowledge. Of how that technology worked, every time a Vorthok ship tried to execute a maneuver, the humans were ready for it. Every weapon they fired was countered perfectly. It was as if the human fleet could read their minds, because in a way they could. Engine room to bridge came a panicked voice over Vextel's communicator. Sir, our pet human is. She's operating. Our computers. What? She knows our systems better than we do. She's been watching us for 3 years. The same scene was playing out across the Vorthok fleet. Humans who had been dismissed as mindless animals were revealing themselves as engineers, tacticians, and soldiers. They disabled ships from the inside while the Federation fleet attacked from outside in 30 minutes. The mighty Vorthok 4th Fleet was destroyed, but the real victory was happening across Vorthok space, on 12 worlds. Human rescue teams were landing at the exact locations provided by Sarah's network. The pets on each world had already disabled security systems and unlocked doors. Guards found their weapons mysteriously jammed. Communication networks crashed at precisely the right moments. Sarah stood on the bridge of Marcus's ship as they approached HFY Prime. The same marketplace where she had been kept in a cage was now in chaos as Federation Marines landed to rescue the remaining humans. Sarah, Marcus said, we're getting reports from all the rescue sites. It's working. We're getting them all out. Sarah nodded, but her expression remained grim. How many? Final count. 1,743 humans rescued. All alive. For the first time in 3 years, Sarah smiled. Really smiled. And the Vorthok fleet destroyed completely. The survivors are surrendering. Sarah activated the ship's communication system. Her voice was broadcast across all Vorthok space. People of the Vorthok Consortium, this is Dr. Sarah Okafor of the Human Federation. 3 years ago, you captured our colony ship. You sold our people as pets because you believed we were primitive animals. She paused, looking out at the stars where her fellow humans were finally free. You were wrong. What you thought was defeat was actually infiltration. What you thought was training was actually intelligence gathering. Every human you kept in a cage was a soldier waiting for the right moment to strike. Her voice grew harder. Oh, you made one critical mistake. You assumed that because we didn't resist immediately, we were broken. You never considered that sometimes? The most dangerous predator is the one that chooses to wait. The broadcast ended, and Sarah turned to Marcus. What's next? He asked. Sarah looked at the datapad in her hands. It contained reports from the rescued humans, not just about their own experiences, but about other species they had seen in Vorthok's captivity. The Zephyrians, she said. Blue-skinned humanoids from the Outer Rim, than Vorthok had been keeping. Them as exotic dancers for 5 years? Marcus raised an eyebrow. You want to rescue them too? I want to rescue everyone, Sarah replied. The Federation is forming a new department, the Sentient Liberation Force. I'm going to head it. In the Vorthok. Sarah's smile was cold, but satisfied. They're finished as a military power. Their fleet is destroyed, their intelligence networks are compromised. And every species they've enslaved now knows the truth. They'll be lucky if they can defend their own homeworlds. She looked back at the stars, thinking of all the humans who were finally going home. You know what the best part is? She said to Marcus. What? They still don't understand what happened. Even now, they can't accept that their pets outsmarted them. They're looking for some complex explanation, some advanced technology they missed. Sarah laughed, a sound of pure joy and triumph. They can't believe they were defeated by the same species they thought was too primitive to understand language. But that's exactly what makes us human. We endure, we adapt, we remember. And when the time is right, she gestured toward the rescue ships carrying freed humans away from their former prison worlds. We bite back. The war was over. The humans had won. And across the galaxy, species that had been enslaved for years were learning that sometimes salvation came from the most unexpected places, from the ones who had been treated as pets but had never forgotten they were predators.